I'm Rachel Davis, and I've been working on a 100 Days project, creating mosaics inspired by nature. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some of the inspiration from nature that I've been using for the project. So each of the mosaics that I made in the 100 Days project, each had an inspiration image as a starting point. Those images were all photographs that I'd taken when I've been out and about hiking in different places, things that have caught my eye when I've been out and thought, that might make a good mosaic, or actually that's just really cool and I like the surfaces and the textures, and just taking photographs for inspiration. So I kind of looked through my camera roll and picked out some pieces, some photographs to get me started, and it turns out that I take a lot of photographs of lichen, I take a lot of photographs of bark, of rocks, and those kind of themes have kind of emerged as I've done the 100 Days project. There are other things in there as well. There's a couple of sort of different landscapes and other things I've experimented with as well. But those, the lichen and the bark and the rocks, play quite a dominant theme in these mosaics. Although there's, obviously a lot of variety in the actual designs themselves. So I decided to use these images of nature as inspiration because I think, well, first of all, I needed something as inspiration. Like 100 mosaic designs is a lot to create, so they need to come from somewhere. So having a starting point was really, really useful. And I think nature is just, there's so much variety, so many interesting patterns and surfaces and textures that that you can use for inspiration. And I had lots of images already, that it just seemed a logical progression to just keep working with it and using those images and challenging myself to kind of stick to something and keep going with it and and see where it led. And I guess the other reason as well was that I'd just written a book about creating mosaics inspired by nature and talking through the process of how you can start with the inspiration and get to a finished piece. And I kind of felt I kind of need to put my money where my mouth is and actually create some examples of all the techniques that I kind of cover in the book. I used kind of making these mosaics as well, and just starting at one point with an image and then creating a mosaic from it. So it was a really good practice, and it's built up this really nice body of work that can go alongside the book and hopefully be a source of inspiration for others that want to kind of follow a similar approach and start off with a picture that they've taken where they're out hiking and how they can translate that into something they can turn into a mosaic and put on a wall or something. There's one section of lichen that I took photographs of that has just the lovely colours in it. There were sort of some greens and kind of grey, greeny, bluey kind of colour that had a really nice slate that was kind of a good colour for that. And it has some lovely reddy brown kind of cups, circular bits in the lichen. And I just like the combination of those colours. And so there's 3 different mosaics that I've made. They look very different to each other. One's kind of taken more of a distance, one's zoomed right into these cups. And one's kind of a halfway, just looking at the patterns that the red creates against the background. So yeah, this sort of same kind of starting point of this piece of lichen that was growing on a tree has kind of led to, different mosaics and different designs. And that's kind of a theme sort of throughout, although each mosaic started with an inspiration image, you could take the same image and interpret it very differently as well. Obviously within nature there's all sorts of different textures, surfaces, patterns and things. And I guess when I started the project I picked the easier ones. So the ones that kind of I looked at and thought, yeah, that's, I can see a design quite easily in them. But I also had a lot of images that I'd taken because I really liked, but it was really quite hard to think about how to then translate them into a design. Some of them had, lots of interesting kind of crossing lines. For example, there was one of sort of seaweed that the colours were just amazing, but to kind of follow and translate all those lines into a pattern on a very small scale would have been quite difficult. So one of the things that I did with a lot of the images that I found hard to interpret into an actual design was to take the colours from them. So kind of putting aside how the image looked, sort of the patterns that were there, and just focusing on the colours and create, I've done it in a number of these mosaics, is to kind of just pick out the colours, pick out a palette of materials that, resembled the colours in the photograph, and just create kind of a series of kind of organic lines using some big bits and some little bits to create more interest, but very much kind of focused on the colours rather than the patterns. And I found that was quite a nice way to work as well. It's very much, abstracting some of the key elements of the image and retaining those without having to worry about how do I get a curve like that, or how do I kind of cross these lines over and things like that. So that was quite a satisfying way to work. And it was also actually one of the quicker ways to work as well. When I had to make one, when I didn't have as much time, I was like, let me pick a palette based on an image and create these kind of more linear mosaics that still had a very organic feel to them.